are listening to The Radiator, and now begins Rocket Shop Radio Hour at Big Heavy World. I'm your host, Abby BK, and with us in the studio today, we have Ryan Sweezey. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. So when was the last time that you were in here? Or maybe not this space, but our previous space?
Yeah, it was a while ago. I was trying to look back through my Gmail to figure out when it was. I think it was 2018, so I think it was 6 years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, it was when it was still in the Arts Riot building.
Okay.
It's a lot more cluttered and cramped in that room.
Yeah, so I've heard from our DJs and such. I guess welcome to the more spacious building. We love to start things off with a song. So what have you got?
All right. I'm going to do a song called Cobblestones that I released as a single back in February. I didn't know we were headed when we started. Sometimes you just start walking with no destination in mind. We just thought that it's nice enough this evening. Let's go out and feel the breeze and stroll to the ocean side. Jamie and I took a walk along the cobblestones in the old north end of Boston. Didn't understand the cost then of the life we'd leave behind. Like the history all around us, now it's just memories in my mind of Jamie and I. Soon we got to talking, and we found that we got lost and we'd never find our path. And though I didn't want to give in, I knew it's what we needed, so I just let her turn on back. Jamie and I took a walk along the cobblestones in the old north end of Boston. Didn't understand the cost then of the life we'd leave behind. Like the history all around us, now it's just memories in my mind of Jamie and I. Now I'm here, along with these old buildings, with a revolution beating in this weathered heart of mine. And I know I'm still on my way somewhere, and there's beauty all around here, though hers just passed me by. Jamie and I took a walk along the cobblestones in the old north end of Boston. Didn't understand the cost then of the life we'd leave behind. Like the history all around us, now it's just memories in my mind. Jamie and I got lost along the cobblestones in the old north end of Boston. Didn't understand the cost then of the life we'd leave behind. It's a mystery that confounds us, I suppose it's just our time. Jamie, goodbye. Revolution beating in this weathered heart of mine. It's been so long since our journey started, and though it's sad we've parted, I'm too tired to cry for Jamie and I.
Cobblestones, Ryan Sweezey. So obviously you mentioned this is one of your newest singles that you've released, and off air before we were on air, we were talking about the recording of some of your new singles down in Philly. So take us through what you've been up to recording these new singles and what's been going on.
Yep. So there's a lot going on. 2 years ago now, I put out an album called Out Searching that I recorded up here in Burlington with Chris Hawthorne. He has since moved to Philly, where he's from originally. So at the end of February, I did a week down there working on my new album. That single, I've put out 3 singles this year that actually aren't for that album. I'm kind of putting them out as like a kind of like deluxe addendum onto Out Searching. we actually recorded them before he left because I wanted to try to cram them in while he was still here. And then they've been done for a while and I've just kind of been sitting on them. But I do have a new album in the works, somewhere between 10 and 14 tracks that I demoed up here with Jeremy Mendocino at Lane Gibson Studio, and then did some pre-production remotely with Chris and went down to Philly at the end of February, got probably 60-70% of everything done, and now we're just still throwing stuff back and forth. He's adding keys onto things. We're doing some edits and that sort of thing. I might eventually redo the vocals, but I'll probably try to do that up here for cost efficiency, etc. But for that, I am running, in the past, I've done like Indiegogo campaigns to make the albums. I'm doing another crowdfunding thing this time around just through my own website, which is nice because they don't take a portion of it. So it's just the only thing that I don't get is like the PayPal fees if you're doing PayPal or Stripe or whatever. So yeah, that's kind of also just an ongoing thing, which is nice. There didn't need to be a deadline with it. So like as I run out of funds, I can try and raise more of them through either donation or pre-order or just selling some merch and that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. So have you found that releasing singles to kind of like tease certain things has been working? I know that you said the singles are kind of a continuation of your last album as the deluxe. But I feel like a lot of artists are kind of doing that now rather than just releasing the whole album, like focusing more on singles. Is that something that you were kind of just doing, thinking of it that way, or?
Yeah, so I kind of go back and forth in my thought process on like how you should approach these things because it is always changing. But typically what I do is I record an album and then I choose a couple things to put out as singles beforehand. These singles were a little unique in that I really loved the album we made with Chris, and I wanted to get these songs recorded with the same group of musicians while I had the chance. One of them in particular that I'll play in a little bit is a song called Bartender, which has been floating around for 10 years. I've released a few different versions of it that I was never quite satisfied with. But after having worked with Chris and how everything came out, it was like the most kind of just organic, lively sounding thing I'd done. I wanted to retry it with those guys. So that's kind of was the advent of these. But there is kind of that kind of out of sight, out of mind thing if you're not releasing something. So one of the other things I did with him while he was still up here is I recorded a bunch of acoustic covers, and I've been kind of just sprinkling those out here and there every once in a while. Once I get through these singles, I have a few more that are ready to go that I'm going to put out. And then the hope is that the full album will be done sometime next year, but there isn't really a hard deadline on that.
Okay, got it. Well, that's exciting. So take us through what your ideas are for the new album then too. Yeah,
kind of hard to say. It's largely the same people, different guitarist, little more cost effective this time. The guitarist on the last album was this guy, Jay Barclay, who's a session musician out of Nashville, and he has played with Augustana, who's my all-time favorite band. And when I learned he was an option, I was like, yep, we're going to get him involved. But, you know, the more albums I fund that don't make a lot of money, the harder it is to keep spending money on it. So, so the guitarist this time around is a guy who's in Philly, but again, used to be in Vermont, like Chris. His name is Colin Lennox. And he was great. And anything that we didn't get done while he was in the studio there, I tried my hand at electric, which I've been doing more lately with my band. I haven't really done that in a long time because I've spent so much time as a solo acoustic performer. But yeah, so just really the approach this time I wanted to do a little bit differently was to try to make it sound a little more modern. My last album, like, I love bands of the 90s. Like, a lot of people that have listened to my last album have been like, it sounds very Gin Blossoms. And I'm like, okay, like, I love that. So this time around, I tried to listen to like, all right, Matchbox 20's album that they just put out, what did that sound like? So it's still the same bands, but maybe a little bit more of a modern sound to it. So that's kind of what the goal is this time. But otherwise, we're just kind of like throwing stuff down and seeing how it comes out, which is I think an easier way to go. Part of why songs like Bartender didn't come out
the best, I think, in the past was like we went into the studio with a very particular vision of what we were trying to do, as opposed to just kind of, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah. Interesting. So how do you end up finding people for your session musicians, and is that on you to do that, or is your contact in Philly helping you to find people to fill in the gaps?
Yeah, so it's largely Chris. So I originally got in touch with because he had worked with Troy Millette up here, and I'm friends with Troy Millette. I liked the stuff he had done with Chris. I reached out to Chris, and then it was just kind of like the guys he suggested. So the other guys are guys that are up here. The bassist Kyle Saunier, who plays with a bunch of bands, and Caleb Bronze on drums, who plays with a bunch of bands, and then Chris himself and me. And yeah, so it's mostly my one connection is Chris, and then he goes and finds all the other people for me.
Gotcha. Awesome. And so the new album, is everything written for that already, that you're in the process of recording, or are you still working on writing for it?
Yep. So it's all done. I had kind of kicked it into overdrive last summer. I had reached out to Chris to see how we could make this work, being in two different locations. I had a few songs that were done that I really liked, and I wanted to, made me want to start working on a new album. And then from there, I had a bunch of kind of partial ones that once we started talking, that was really my push to just finish them. What is pretty different for me this time around is, historically as a writer, I'm not someone that can just be like, I'm going to write a song today and I'm going to sit down and do it. It's usually just I get a burst of inspiration, I write it, I do it all in one sitting, and if I don't finish it, then I'm never going back to it. And most of the songs I've written in the past, that's what's happened with them. This one, it was very different because I'd say at least half of the songs are things where I went back and found old voice memos from the last 8 to 10 years where I was like, this is a verse I really like. Why didn't I finish that song? And I'm going to try and finish it. Or this is a song I thought I finished, but there's parts of it I didn't like. So I edited some of the lyrics and rearranged some of it. So it's definitely been a very different approach for me, in how I've crafted these songs this time around.
Yeah, that's interesting how it's switched up, because I feel like sometimes people can get stuck in their ways of how to go about it. So
yeah, and I've kind of had to do that too, because I feel like the last bunch of years I've had a lot more trouble than I used to finding inspiration. I don't know if some of that is just getting older and tired and feeling like I've said all the things that I've been trying to say already. But yeah, so that was, it kind of just started as an exercise to, extra chord. Started as an exercise to get me out of a little bit of a writer's block of all right, let me just try to work with some of these songs that are almost kind of removed from me from a personal standpoint at this point, because I've written them so long ago. The other thing too, that's been hard in terms of just writing a complete song out of nothing is, the more I've recorded, the more I've worked with producers and edited songs of it used to be I'd write a song, then we'd kind of trim the fat from there. And now it's I try to trim the fat as I'm writing it. And then that just kind of makes it harder for it to come out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So your process, you feel has kind of changed and evolved as time has gone on.
Yeah. And it is kind of a weird thing to go back and revisit a lot of stuff, because it's I feel to some degree I'm I should be writing new stuff, or if this didn't feel it was good enough before, why is it good enough now? But sometimes you need kind of fresh ears and eyes on some of that, of I might have written something that I didn't like at the time, and then 5-6 years later I listen to it, I'm oh no, that was good, I should follow that thread and see where it goes.
Right. And bringing a fresh perspective to it.
Yeah.
So in terms of curating what songs you felt made sense to go on this album, do you feel the process of choosing what songs fit on the project was also kind of different in that way, since they were ones from the past?
Yeah. And it did, like, I have a lot of trouble narrowing anything down. Like if I'm making like a playlist or of something of like, it's 70 hours long because it's just like, I can't choose. And especially like when it comes to things you've written and they're your babies, you're like, but I want all of them to be out there in the world. But, you know, more than anything from a monetary standpoint, that's just not really a plausible thing to do. So once I started talking to Chris and I whittled it down, it was still like 25 songs. And then from there I had to get it down to, I made it to 14. And then now it's just a matter of like, what are we going to have time to do? But in terms of which ones I was choosing, some of them were half finished. So some of them got weeded out just by virtue of I couldn't finish them. Other ones, you get somewhere like, all right, this song is too similar to this other song, so like I'm choosing between one or the other. And there are definitely other songs where it just, you know, sonically maybe doesn't work. Of like, I'm not like a big country guy, but sometimes I write stuff that is kind of more in that vein, and I'm like, all right, that doesn't belong with the more rocky stuff. Like maybe that's on a different album, and I save that for the future. Also, like from the lessons of, you know, something wasn't right with the other versions of Bartender. There's also another song that I'm going to play later that's going to be on the new record called Sleepless Nights, which I'd been working on off and on for like basically since I want to say 2015 or 16, where I was like, all right, the first half of this song is done, but like no matter what I do, the second half of this song just like doesn't feel right. And then I finally revisited here and I'm like, all right, I got it. So like sometimes I don't want to, like, I really like this song. There's one in particular, this song I was working on called Sunk Cost, that I decided to not do because I kept like reworking it and I really love it, but it's just not there. And my hope is that if I don't do it now, you know, in a few years time, something's going to click and I'm going to figure out what the magic formula was for it.
Yeah. So how would you describe the feeling of like, just kind of feeling like it's not clicking? And how would you describe when you know that it feels right?
Just, I guess, kind of a feeling of fluidity to some degree, but like for that song in particular, I always feel like it's really long. There's a lot of words in it, and I feel like it's really long, and then I like listen to the voice memo and it's 3 minutes long, and I'm like, what? So it's like something in my impression of what I think is happening and what is actually happening isn't quite there. Structurally, it just kind of feels like there's some sections where like I've added a few measures where there's no vocal because there needs to be a break there, but then it doesn't really suit where it's going. But the biggest thing I think is I started to play some of them out and like I just wouldn't like I'd feel the energy kind of leaving me while I was playing it and being like, I don't feel like this is going well. And like, it might've been going fine to the audience, but to me, I'm like, this just doesn't feel like, something feels off about this while I'm showing it to people. So
yeah,
I think that's
that
kind of
makes
the
sense.
biggest thing.
Totally. And do you try to like test out like new songs and stuff, and kind of take into consideration which ones to put on the albums based on how your audience is also reacting when you're performing?
To some degree, I feel like I used to do that like a bit more. In the earliest days, like the first albums I recorded 2 albums in college that like there was none of that because I wasn't really playing out much. It was just kind of like, here's the songs I've written that I'm playing for like 3 people that I know in my dorm room. And then kind of like middle albums, I was doing a lot more. Like I lived in Somerville, Mass, and I was going to open mics all the time. So I would write songs and try them out. And that was like the most prolific time of my writing too, because I was just like doing those open mics all the time, surrounded by music, constantly inspired. Like I would write a song like that day and go and try it out that night and that sort of thing, and kind of workshop them as I went and see what was getting a reaction, what wasn't. Now it's kind of closer to all right, I'm just kind of writing these, and like other than my like circle of close people aren't really hearing them. And then I might just, I would play them occasionally at a gig if I'm at like a restaurant and I've done like 10 covers and no one's listening. I'm like, okay, I'll throw one of mine. I may as well if nobody cares anyway. So it's I don't know. It kind of goes in waves.
Yeah. Gotcha. Well, we'd love to hear your next song. So what do you have next?
Sure. I'll do Bartender next. So this is the one that came out, well, I wrote it 10 years ago. It's an album I recorded back home. It was on. There was an acoustic album I recorded. It was on as well. And then we just re-released it as a single. Bartender, hope you don't mind if I pull up a seat. It's only Wednesday, but it's already shown it's shaping up to be a terrible week. Help me get over the hump, 'cause I can't do it alone. Should put an end to my 5-year streak. Bartender, bartender, serve me up a little hope on the rocks. Might need a little help to drink it all down. I'm feeling helpless with my head in the stocks, while I'm waiting for the blade to come down. Don't you know that it's the only way I've found to get me through the day? Let me know if you know of another order that could maybe make her wanna stay. Bartender, don't have a driver to get me home, and it's a problem that I'll have to get used to if she decides she's gonna leave me alone. I didn't plan ahead, never had to before. Now my mind is blank as stone. Won't you please let me stay a little longer, 'cause she's left me so weak in my bones. Bartender, bartender, serve me up a little hope on the rocks. Might need a little help to drink it all down. I'm feeling helpless with my head in the stocks, while I'm waiting for the blade to come down. Don't you know that it's the only way I've found to get me through the day? Let me know if you know of another order that could maybe make her want to stay. Bartender, I'll remember all our future dreams. Love mender, please send her back home to me. Grief ender, help me find a way to make her see I won't surrender. I will defend her for eternity. Serve me up a little hope on the rocks. Might need a little help to drink it all down. I'm feeling helpless with my head in the stocks, while I'm waiting for the blade to come down. Don't you know that it's the only way I've found to get me through the day? Let me know if you know of another order that could maybe make her wanna stay. Bartender, I will remember. Bartender, thank you for your time. I'm not sure if this helped too much, but I do appreciate you trying. As I stumble out the door like I've never done before, she is still all that's on my mind.
Bartender, Ryan Sweezey. So take us through a little bit more about your band and how that kind of changes up your sound, having some other musicians with you rather than doing the solo acoustic type of gigging.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun. It's been very different. I haven't played much with a band before, like a little bit in high school, and then a couple of little one-off shows here and there over the years, but it kind of started, I had joined a band that's currently, I guess you'd say on hiatus. I don't really know what the long-term status of it is, but Jesse Hagen has a band, or had a band called Shake, and I had joined it originally as just a backup singer and playing tambourine as like the seventh person in this band. Lineup of it changed a little bit. I started to play a little more guitar as well. And then with the release of the Outsearching album, I wanted to do a full band album release show. So I asked some of the other guys in the band if they would also learn my stuff, and that was kind of what it was. It was there was five of us. The first Ryan Sweezey, at the time it was Ryan Sweezey Band show, that were all from Shake. And then last September, Jesse had moved further away. He's still doing some stuff in the area, but it just was going to be too hard for him to stay with the band. So we had lost our electric guitarist. I have really only played acoustic over the last 10 to 14 years. I hadn't played electric consistently since high school jazz band. But I wanted to challenge myself to play electric, and it was definitely an adjustment at first. Just it's a different style of playing. I'm used to like very hard, stubborn acoustic strings, and I had just like way too heavy of a touch at first. And then it's starting to come back, but then just like different kinds of gear and getting the pedals and trying to shape your tone and sound and all that stuff, as well as just playing different parts while I'm also singing. So I had to like kind of, first of all, learn the electric parts to my songs because I hadn't been the one that had played them on the albums.
Wow.
And then also see which ones I could play and sing at the same time and which ones I had to kind of simplify or come up with a different part. But we're playing more shows, and it's getting more comfortable every time. We just played it on tap last weekend. That was pretty fun. We got some more stuff coming up. A bunch of stuff in July. We're at Taylor Park in St. Albans on next Wednesday, the 3rd. We're playing at the Homegrown in Vermont Festival at Spruce Peak the weekend of the 6th and 7th. We're playing on the 6th. There's a bunch of local acts in that. Troy Millette, The Grift, Milton Busker, Andriana Chabot, like a whole bunch of people. So please get some tickets for that. They're just $25 to get you entry for the whole weekend. So that's you can't really beat that deal. There's like at least 10 bands playing those 2 days. They're all great local bands. But yeah, so it's the band now is called Ryan Sweezey and the Midnight Walkers. That name came from back in Mass. 3 of my roommates were in a band called Echo Point that was very short-lived, but they had a song called Midnight Walker, and I used that name once back home, and then I didn't love the just being Ryan Sweezey Band. I wanted it to be like Ryan Sweezey and something, and that just still felt like a natural fit, so we went back to that. But it's a lot of guys that play in a lot of different bands. It's me. It's Joshua Glass on keyboard, who's in a bunch of bands and does his own stuff. Chris Doncaster on bass, who's in basically like every band in Vermont, it seems. And Eric Belrose on drums, who played with Nobby Reed for years and has done some other stuff, plays with the Nurback Brothers. So the biggest adjustment, honestly, is just trying to schedule stuff, because now I'm at the mercy of 4 people's schedules instead of just my own, and then also trying to rehearse and it's a lot more coordinating than I'm used to. But
Yeah, definitely. So how often do you find that you're playing with the band versus playing just the solo gigs? Are you doing like a mix? Are you focusing more on the band?
So it's a mix. Long term, I think I'd like to focus more on the band. This is the first year where we've really had a lot of places reaching out to us for stuff, because it's only, we formed 2 years ago and we played 2 shows that year. And then last year we did Foam in the winter, and then we started to do some of the summer concert series, which for me was also just, I kind of lucked out because it was a lot of stuff that Shake previously had done, and they'd reach out to Jesse and he'd be like, I'm not doing Shake this year, but like all the same guys are playing in this band, you should book them. So that was kind of my foot in the door for a lot of those. And then just, word of mouth has increased since then, and we've gotten a lot more offers this year, and I'm hoping that continues into next year. I still do a lot of solo stuff. The solo stuff is less artisty for me. It's more, playing covers at the bar. At some point, I'd like to get away from doing that. Especially, it's a lot. Like from June to September, I play like 50 gigs. And when you also are working a full-time job, it's a lot. So
It's a lot, yeah.
It was a lot easier to do that when I was 24 than now at 32. I just want to sleep all the time. So, yeah. So ultimately the goal is to do more stuff with the band. It's just fun. And it also gives me a lot more outlet to do more of my original music. Every once in a while I still get, like, we'll do a show once in a while. I haven't played it at Radio Bean in like 4 years, but like that sort of thing I still like to do once in a while. That tends to be more of, I think, a winter thing at this point, where I don't have as many of the other, like, for lack of a better word, money making gigs. But I think after the last couple of years too, I've done so much of it that I'm kind of ready to scale that back. And I think next year I'm not going to do as much, which will leave more for the band, but also, like, there's something to be said for making yourself a little scarce too, for like getting people to come to events. If you're playing too much, then like, what's the incentive to go? So finding that balance has always been a process.
Yeah. Well, you're somehow doing it all. I'm very impressed. So with your full-time job and then also juggling your band, your solo stuff, and then also like all of the new projects, like how much of your time do you feel like you're spending like in a week dedicated to music?
It's hard to quantify. I'm lucky at this point in that I've had a great job the last couple of years that I work from home 3 days a week and go to the office 2 days a week. And it's very flexible. So it's left me a lot of time, but also just mental capacity to like not run myself into the ground doing this like I was doing it at my previous job. But it's still a lot, and just throw on top of booking and like trying to find new venues. And I was talking to Ross earlier about how for the fall, I'm trying to plan like a little like 2-week solo tour, which I've never done before. And that's all kinds of stuff to try to coordinate. That it's also just hard as someone who's very introverted, and I don't thrive on networking. And just like fairly socially anxious and all this other stuff, and that the self-promotion is very difficult for me. And then you throw in again to working on the album. I love working on the album, but as I'm trying to crowdfund, I have to like, you don't get anywhere unless you individually message people and ask them to give you money, which is very uncomfortable. So it is very draining. Just the performing alone this time of year is just, there's so much of it that I don't want to do anything once I get home. I just want to be a vegetable for like just lie on the couch in the air conditioning and just do nothing but watch TV. But I need to, force myself to try to be productive at least for like a half hour to an hour each day to get something done. Otherwise I'm just kind of rewriting the to-do list over and over again. So
right. We got to rest too, Great. Well, we would love to hear your third song. So what have you got?
All right. I'm going to play Sleepless Nights, which is going to be on the new album. This is one of the ones I'm most excited about. This is the one that I mentioned. The first half of it has basically been done for close to a decade, but I've rewritten the back half of it a lot. But I'm finally at a place where it's not going to change. These 4 wild walls ain't giving me shelter late at night, and they close in on me, but they can't hold me tight. But keep me warm like your soft skin, I know it could, 'cause they're made of cold stone and wood. Ceiling overhead stares at me and the floor. Above this full-size bed that has room for one more. The silence deafening, it's keeping me from sleep. Without the rhythm of you breathing next to me, here in the dark. How long has it been now? The light of the moon is pouring in.
else is probably nothing of concern. Or maybe it's the ghost of lovers past that left me spurned. It could be monsters hiding underneath the bed. Or maybe it's just noise inside my head. Here in the dark, how long has it been now? The light of the moon is pouring in. Here is the mark of another sleepless night now. The light of the moon is pouring in. Looks like another sleepless night again. The harder that I try, it seems the further I descend. Caught up in the memories that I wish I could forget. It's never enough, never ends. Here in the dark, how long has it been now? The light of the moon is pouring in. Here is the mark of another sleepless night now. It's never enough, never ends. Through the window I see daylight creeping in. Tomorrow has arrived, and much to my chagrin, still can't turn down all this noise inside my mind. I swear it's getting louder all the time, all the time.
Sleepless Nights, Ryan Sweezey. So tell us about the solo tour that you're planning on doing. Are you trying to do this in Vermont, the New England region? Where are you all thinking of going?
Trying to go a ways down the coast, kinda. We'll see what happens. It's gonna depend on who gets back to me. I have a few things kind of in the works. But my plan is at least to go to a few cities where, like, I know I have some friends there that'll come to some things. Like, one of my best friends lives in Charlotte, so that's kind of like the furthest south point that I'm planning on going to. I also want to make a stop in Nashville because it's Nashville. At the very least, even if I can't get a gig there, my hope is to be there on like a Monday so I can do open mic at the Bluebird or something like that. But tentatively, my plan is I'm going to hit Rochester, where I have some friends, and Pittsburgh and Columbus on the way to Nashville, and then over to Charlotte, back up and stop in probably Philly. I also have some family in Virginia, so I might try to plan there. But, you know, all trying to plan it mostly around where I might have a place to stay.
Totally.
To, try to keep it as cheap as possible, because I don't plan on making a lot of money on this trip.
Well, it'll be a fun road trip nonetheless. So we are nearing the end of the show, so we always like to give artists the opportunity to promote yourself. Tell us where your upcoming gigs are and where we can find your music, et cetera, et cetera. So the floor is yours. Yeah,
so as I mentioned, there's plenty going on this summer. My website is just ryansweezey.com. It's ryansweezey.com. On there, you can find links to my music. Most of my original stuff is out on Spotify and Apple Music and all those places. Also Bandcamp, if you want to, contribute more to paying an artist, that option exists. But you can get to those links through my website. There's a whole list of shows on there. We got plenty coming up with the Midnight Walkers in July. Lots of solo stuff for me this weekend. I'm playing Friday. I'm playing at Sisters of Anarchy, which is the little ice cream place at Fisher Brothers Farm in Shelburne. They do a food truck night on Fridays. Saturday afternoon, I'm playing Cold Hollow and Waterbury. Just a lot of stuff all over the place. I have a weekly residency on Tuesdays at the Tavern at Essex Resort. There's a couple of those in July where I won't be playing because I have tickets to Counting Crows and Train.
I'm also going to Train.
Nice.
I'm excited for that.
Yes, but for the most part, I'm there every week on Tuesdays. But yeah, just check out the website. It's on there. Follow me on social media, Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, which I try to do once in a while, but I'm too old. I don't like TikTok. That's all Ryan Sweezey Music as the handle. As I mentioned, I'm fundraising for the new album that you can find through my website as well. So yeah, moral of the story, visit the website, see where I'm playing and follow everything on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So what's your last song that you have for us?
So I'll do a song called Only You, which is on Out Searching. I've only done the couple of singles that came out after the album, so I suppose I'll pitch the thing you can actually find more readily. Stare down at the carpet. Just another day that's kicking off the same old way. 25 years down and it's still all I know to start with. All I see is the ground. If only I could turn around and see you there beside me, dear. What a beautiful sight to wake up to. And all that I am missing here is only you. The one I've never had's the one who's fueling my addiction. The one that I can't find's the one who's always on my mind. Love without a target sounds like a contradiction. It's how I know I live, so I'll hold on till I can give myself to whoever she may be. What a beautiful dream to hold on to. And all that I'll need you to be is only you. You've got a face that's in the crowd, and I've got a head that's in the clouds. I've got a heart that always pounds gallons for you. 'Cause a heart that won't give out's the one that's beating at its hardest. It will never rest until it has fulfilled its quest. The man who hits his mark's the one who casts his line the farthest. So I'll be keeping on until I finally find the one. We'll live in a house with our name on the door. What a beautiful life to look forward to. And all that I am waiting for is only you. I just want you, nothing more. Yes, only you. It's only you. It's only you.
You, Ryan Sweezey. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And don't wait as long to come back this time. Hopefully we won't be in a new space again. But yeah, and listeners, thanks so much for listening to Rocket Shop Radio Hour. I'm your host, Abby BK. We don't have a Rocket Shop next week, but the following week we are back in the studio. July 10th, we will have the Green Mountain Chamber Music Festival here in the studio, a bit of a different twist with some classical music for us. So make sure to tune in. But as for now, this has been Rocket Shop Radio Hour, and we hope you have a wonderful day or night. We'll see you next time. Woo-hoo.